So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Tom Belt, who's founder and managing director at AAWE. So, Tom, thanks for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, AAWE, what you do, how you help people, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. So AAWE, we're quite unique in lots of ways in that we are customer experience specialists. That is our sole focus. That's all that we do. And we are aiming to help businesses grow and for brands to build through the power of customer experience. We feel like it's a hugely important tool for any modern brand to utilize as they continue to grow and think about potentially the next step of their growth process. And so what we aim to do is really bring the customer to them. We look at what their journey is with their business, wherever that may be, whether it's as they're trying to purchase from you, whether it's trying to purchase more products from you, or potentially even trying to leave you, and what can we do to understand that journey to obviously stop that happening. So we offer a lot of comprehensive, rigorous expert analysis into any type of customer journey that may be going on with your business, and then offer expert recommendations in what we can do to improve it. And that's not the kind of typical PowerPoint slide PDF where it's just a three key bullet points or some top line messaging. What we really do is get under the skin of the experience, offer very tactical, very quick to implement improvements, right through to some more strategic, bigger thought pieces around how you can maybe reposition your business to be more aligned to what your customers needing. So that's something that we really look to help businesses with. And yeah, we've been doing it for nearly 2 years now. I've got a long experience in the world of customer experience. It seems to be a bit of a buzzword in lots of ways, but I've been doing it for so long now, and maybe that kind of buzz has worn off for me. But yeah, really interested in the space and helping businesses grow using the power of customer experience.
Brilliant, brilliant. And thinking about it, I don't know if I'm common or unique. When I think about customer experience, I can think quite quickly about several very bad experiences. And I better not name because I'll go off on one. What and there's one or two good experiences, but what would you say makes what are a couple of the key things that you often look for in forming a better customer experience? What are the mistakes people make in quite often?
Yeah, I often boil it down to understanding the dynamic between a customer's expectation as they enter the experience and then the reality in which it's delivered. So more often than not, what you find is probably in your experience or the experiences you're thinking about, you had a very different expectation going in. And often brands and businesses can make a bit of a rod for their own back just purely due to poor communication, poor
Yeah,
branding, or just trying to be something that they're not. And then
yeah,
it kind of lands an expectation in the customer's mind. And then when they go through the process of actually, say, purchasing a product through this business, because the two are very misaligned, it results in a very poor experience, or maybe the communication wasn't clear, or maybe the overall process was just a bit convoluted. So I think what we try and do is first and foremost understand what the expectation is that a customer has before they enter a journey, and
yeah.
then look at diagnosing the reality of the experience against that, and then you can quickly start seeing ways in which it can be improved.
Brilliant. That makes a lot of sense. It's that it did I get what I expected, and that makes total sense.
Yeah. And I often talk about the example of Ryanair in this scenario. I mean, Ryanair in lots of ways are hated, for want of a better word.
Yeah,
And people may argue they offer a very poor customer experience. And I would not advocate them as a poster child for customer experience. But at the same time, people are still buying Ryanair tickets because they have set out their store very clearly on what they're trying to achieve and what the kind of brand and business they're trying to be,
yeah,
and customers are happy to buy into that. Whereas if you compare that to maybe a short haul experience that you have with British Airways, that is very, very different. And more often than not, you probably have a poorer experience with British Airways just purely by the disjointed nature of the expectation versus the reality.
yeah. No, that it makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's just being clear on what you're going to get is a
Yeah.
good start for 10, isn't it? I really get that. So you obviously mentioned you've got a lot of experience. If we roll back to you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you.
Yeah, so I guess my first venture in the world of customer experience was working in agencies in London, and it was kind of user experience as they called it then, and
Yeah,
it probably still is called that more often than not. But user experience is typically purely digital design and
yeah,
actually laying out the processes that people may have to purchase products online
yes,
or maybe access their account online and kind of did that for an agency for about 3 years. The agency was called Dare at the time. They recently just won the Agency of the Decade,
oh
and
wow,
we've done a huge amount of work with the likes of EE, with the likes of Investec, etc. And as I became more senior, I was looking to look outside of just purely the digital world and offer a bit more of a strategic relationship with my clients. So then I moved over to an agency called 𝗪𝗵𝘁. They were the biggest agency as part of the WPP network,
right,
who is the biggest network of agencies in the world. And then kind of worked my way up to slowly become the experience partner at that agency that was taking responsibility for all things customer experience
yeah,
across 𝗪𝗪𝘁, and we were a kind of center of excellence for the WPP network within the world of customer experience. We had about a team of 20, again, working with a range of clients from like BT to gosh, I'm trying to remember now. It seems so long ago. Anyway, bigger clients. And then after I'd done that for a while, I felt like I wanted to actually have a bit more skin in the game and work for a business and support them and their customer experience. So I left that role and went to a company called Jabra. They do headphones and speakerphones,
yeah,
very much more in the professional setting, but they do compete with the likes of Apple, Sony,
yeah,
etc. In the kind of audio space. And then kind of felt like after doing that for a year, I missed the variety of working with different businesses and different clients, and I really felt like I wanted to kind of go on my own and start understanding how I could really tell my story in terms of how
yes,
I see customer experience and how I could best use it to support businesses. So set up AAWE just under 2 years ago now here in Leeds because I wanted to be back closer to my roots and
brilliant,
really help drive northern businesses because I think there's a misconception that a lot of the kind of innovation, especially in this space, is done in London. And actually, there's lots of fantastic businesses up here, up
yeah.
north. And I think there's lots of ways in which customer experience can support them. And I want it to be that resource for them.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned before we started that Leeds Digital Festival is on at the moment, and I appreciate we're going wider than digital, but it's a very, yeah, very well attended set of events, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Like the festival's great, but Leeds generally, I mean, I think it's just buzzing in terms of the ecosystem that's around customer experience, digital, etc. Especially within the financial industry. I think I was reading today, within that sector, Leeds outside of London is the biggest hub for investment, and there's a huge amount of opportunity up here. So I really wanted to kind of be that partner to help facilitate that opportunity when it comes to customer experience, especially.
Brilliant, brilliant. So as you founded and grown at AWE, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome as a business?
Yeah, I think for me, being a business owner as well as a practitioner, I think is always a really interesting
Yeah,
dynamic to really balance. I think what I've found is obviously I've got a passion for customer experience, helping businesses, supporting businesses, understanding who their customers are, etc. But at the same time, I've got to do that for myself and understand who my customers are, what their
yeah,
process is, and going through them. And I think that's often why I talk to people around getting that external perspective is really helpful. And I think I've tried to do that as much as I can, even within my business, and get feedback from people who have engaged with me and just constantly trying to think about what's the next thing I could do. And
yeah,
then also, I think there's just the nuts and bolts of how you run the business, managing cash flow, doing your accounts, doing your PR, making sure your socials constantly putting out output in the right way that's on brand, etc. And I think just managing that and making sure that I understand what I really like to do and what I'm good at, and making sure I understand what I don't really like to do and maybe what I'm not so good at, and making sure that I've got the right kind of partners
Absolutely.
working with me to make sure that I'm getting that kind of stuff right because it's equally as important.
Yeah, it's a challenge many business owners fall into, or a trap they fall into, is that we see we have to do everything within the business,
Mm,
and it's very unlikely we're going to love it all, and yet so we end up really working hard on stuff that we don't really enjoy. And
yeah,
I think it's Brian Tracy said that the most successful organizations and potentially people in those organizations are the ones that spend most of their time doing the three things they really love and they're really good at,
yeah, without a doubt.
and delegate everything else because somebody else will love the stuff that we don't. That's the great
Yeah.
thing. I think
Yeah, and I think even just going back to like pieces of advice I got was like know your hourly rate firstly, and then right through to like maybe a more academic sense. I got an MBA certificate from LSE, and it was always talking about opportunity cost and how that is very different in the management accounting world to the financial accounting world. And actually, if you can get someone to do a job that is something that you don't really like to do, often cheaper than it would cost you to do it yourself if you were to pay yourself the same kind of rates that you might be doing if you were in a sales environment, then why not do it? It makes complete sense for the business. It just makes sense.
absolutely, and I suggest the hourly rate is as the person that's responsible for growing the business. So
Mm,
it's not even necessarily at the person that's delivering the. It's like your job is MD. So what would you pay an MD? So anything below that. I remember I found out Brad several years ago was at an event and about 500 people, and he was saying exactly the same thing. He said, "Look, fix your hourly rate once you know what that is. Anything you can pay anybody else to do something at a lower rate is going to make more money for the organization." And he just as part of that, he said, "Look, I haven't cut my own grass for 12 years."
yeah.
And a guy in the audience, and this is totally not deliberate. It was just totally knee jerk reaction. But bloke put his hand up, stood up, and said, "Brad, I like cutting my own grass."
Mm.
And Brad just turned and I said, "Yeah, that's because you haven't got a boat." And it just, the point is, we end up putting up with stuff, I think, and we actually justify the trap we fall into is, yeah, I don't mind it, or I like it, but what if you just had spent all day, every day, just doing those three things you loved and
Yeah.
you're really good at? How much better would life be, business be? How more effective would we be? And
Yeah.
ultimately, how more profitable would we be?
Yeah, massive. I think you can be quite guilty of that, especially in the remote working world. I mean, I'm at home today, as you could probably tell from the drawers and the wardrobe behind me. But like, oh, just a spot of DIY. Why don't I just do that in on Tuesday afternoon? No, that's something that you need to really, really avoid and start thinking about. But what's the kind of things that you feel like most business owners, well, especially when they start out, are maybe guilty of doing that kind of some of the actions, some of the activities that they maybe stopping themselves growing as a business.
Well, certainly that one is one of the biggest ones. In fact, I was speaking to somebody yesterday in exactly that trap, and well, I won't say the type of the business they were, but it was just saying, look, there's a whole bunch of stuff I really don't like, and therefore, while I'm passionate about the business, I'm really not passionate at all about parts of it, and therefore that's held
Mm,
us back. And it was, let's take a step back, let's work out how we can get it done. I think that's the one. And go back to a valuing our time. It's being clear on where we're headed, what is our goal, what is our purpose and our long-term goal, and what plan am I following to achieve it? Because I often say to people, you can get to a certain level of success with a few good people and chew blood and guts. Just work really, really hard. Just everybody pull together. And my first business was like that. I've seen lots of businesses like that. But once we get to a point where we're maxed out on the key resources, often time again,
mm,
then to grow any further is impossible if it's dependent on more time. If I haven't got any more time and growth is dependent, and it's then the change, the absolute, and it's a fundamental change of mindset of working through other people using systems to create the quality of output going forward. And it's very difficult for many people to almost get around the mindset change of it's not about how hard I work anymore.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So that's probably the two biggest ones I'd say, Tom. Uh, yeah, and I suppose the third one is which is more a personal thing, but not taking business and work home
Mm, mm,
because that can really affect our peace of mind, and therefore the results we get. I think those probably at an early stage, those are the three biggest mistakes I find
Yeah.
people do.
A bit of advice I got when I started out was if you own your own business, just recognize that it is essentially going to be a toddler in your life for the rest of your life. And that whenever you're on holiday, it's going to be prodding you and saying, have you answered your email? Oh, if you send this LinkedIn post, you might get us a lead off it, etc., etc. And really, you just do need to separate the two, regardless of the fact that the being a business owner and your business is your baby and you feel like you really need to dedicate a huge amount of time to it, there is a separation that you need to create even in that scenario.
No, agreed. I absolutely agree. And what would you say the biggest things you've learned about growing a business? Obviously, you might have learned that from challenges or different, and obviously we've talked about a couple of things. But what are the biggest learnings about business in general?
Yeah, I think in terms of growing the business, like f for myself, thinking about AAWE outside of the world of customer experience, I'd probably say that you can't be just boots on the ground, talking to people, meeting people, putting yourself forward, and just letting serendipity kind of run its course. That you make sure that you're as visible as possible. Because if you back yourself and understand that you're an expert in your area, you can hold a conversation with just about anyone, and that conversation could lead somewhere.
Yeah,
Not necessarily feel like every conversation needs to lead somewhere and lead to an outcome where someone's going to be paying you money for a project or any kind of length of work. You just need to understand that it will happen if you are constantly having the right kinds of conversations with the right kind of people.
brilliant. Brilliant. I'm literally just listening to Will Smith's autobiography at the moment, and
Mm,
if anyone's interested, if you on audio, he narrates himself, so he's actually quite entertaining. And he literally has just talked about the value of exploration. Literally
mm.
that he'd have a meeting, irrespective of anything. There's some sort of outcome to it. The value of exploration to find out is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and I think you just got to learn something from every one of those
Yes.
conversations. And I think even if you are refining your pitch to the wrong person, well, when you find the right person, that pitch is going to be super sharp. But
Yep.
there's also some learnings of maybe you've got a great offering, you're just not in the room with the right people, and you need to just your effort from that point onwards is to get in front of the right people and identify where they are and search them out and make sure that you're ready to go at that moment because there's nothing more demoralizing, I think, as a business owner in putting a lot of time and effort into the wrong person or the wrong room or the wrong business. And I think really understanding which ones are the right ones is really important. I think we can be quite difficult sometimes in the sense of I feel customer experience, we can help anyone. And
Yes.
I'm always happy to have a coffee, always happy to talk. And again, I think that could lead to nothing but good things. But sometimes you just need to be clear on who are the right people to talk to and make sure you're in front of those.
Absolutely, and I think the key part of any sort of sales situation is establishing need.
Yeah.
As you say, we can be amazing in what we do, but if the person doesn't need anything like the solution we have, then it is irrelevant. And so I know you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest influence on you?
I mean, even though I'm in Leeds, I'm a massive Man United fan. Blame Eric Cantona.
Oh dear,
Obviously, at
sorry,
a very
we
impressionable age, he was my favorite player. He moved over, and I followed him, and didn't know what I was signing up for in terms of growing up in Leeds as a Man United fan from that point onwards. But it's a cross I've worn, and I'm happy to, even though being a Man United fan right now is not the ideal
no,
situation to be in. But I mean, Alex Ferguson as a result. I mean, obviously, I haven't
yes,
worked with him directly or ever met him or anything. But I think there's a huge amount of nuggets that you can take from him. I
yeah,
mean, Harvard Business School studied his approach. You can look into a lot of resources online and academic articles into what he's done. The one thing I've always taken from him though was a phrase he often repeated was, "If there is a doubt, then there is no doubt." So even
yes,
if you've got that inkling of doubt around, is this the right thing to do? Is it not the right thing to do? Have I held on to a player too long? Should I transfer him? And I mean, sometimes it's come to bite him back. Like I think he's talked about Yap Stam as a regret,
Yeah.
for example, if any of your listeners are football fans from the 90s. But I think ultimately following that principle and kind of sticking to your guns more often than not will lead you to a positive place rather than constantly second guessing and maybe thinking something will work out. Just being decisive at a moment where there is doubt and just acting on your gut in that way, I think is something that I've always tried to take on.
Brilliant. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember in my first business, we were very fast moving. Certainly, my division was really fast moving. It was the growth was like 300 or 400% a year for 2 or 3 years, and it was pretty nuts. And it got to the point where it was impossible to make decisions based on much evidence. I mean, obviously, you do as much as you can, and I came to this sort of belief. Well, I don't think realization is right, but belief that I need to make a decision and then by my actions make it the right one, if
Mm,
that makes sense. And I think certainly I find working with fast growing SME businesses, that's a similar thing. It's like we can never, if we know for sure it's the right decision, then we've made it too late. It,
mm.
it's like, we're past that point, and we should be making it here. And yeah, we'll make it the right one, and occasionally you don't, but most of the time you do. But the making of the decision was the most important thing in that timescale, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we always, when we're working with clients, always come back to data and
Right.
what we're hearing from the customer. And I think that offers you a huge amount of insight. And that's something that we really try and take to our clients. Like we often say, we bring the customer to the boardroom. Like you're going to hear the hard truths from customers around what they've been able to do with you, how difficult you've made things, and what they'd like to see in the future. We often offer our own expert analysis of how you can do things. And sometimes that's quite difficult because sometimes in business, when especially with customer experience, there is the right thing to do that might not have a logical reason for it. I was reading into do you know San Pellegrino, the
Yes.
fizzy drink?
Yeah.
Like they that's essentially Fanta in a can, but they've tried to offer it at a more premium price point. So the
Yep.
can's branded differently, and importantly, they put the foil over the top.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember.
Yep.
So that immediately has elevated it above its competitors just for a piece of foil. And there's no financial reason really for that, other
No.
than the fact that all of a sudden you can drink San Pellegrino in a fancy bar. You could put it on the table at a wedding, at the buffet, and it wouldn't look out of place.
Yep.
And they've been able to sell at a higher price point. So often I talk about the world of customer experience in terms of justifying the price you're asking people to pay and making sure that that experience is that justification. And for example, so sometimes you're not going to have everything you need to make the right decision. Just go for it, and if you're sticking to your principles, it will often work out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's coming back, as you say, to evidence over belief. Uh,
Mm,
going back to something you said about what mistakes you say business owners make. I think one I see a lot is making things like marketing and sales decisions on what they would do or want, and not
mm,
what the market would do or want. It's just, well, I wouldn't want it like that. Well, you're not target market, so why would it matter what you want?
yeah.
It's got to be, and I think that's a big thing, is having that evidential side of things, and it's very much a strong coaching principle that people operate primarily through beliefs rather than facts, and challenging them. What's the evidence behind that belief helps
Mm,
people start to see that there might be a different way forward, whether
yeah.
that's a positive way or a negative way. You'll have experienced, most people I work with, including myself, experience quite challenging times in business when we believe things are all going wrong. And for me, it's about what's the evidence behind that. Is because sales have done sorry, do it that way, done that? Does that mean it's going there, or are they just doing that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And often it's all they were doing was that. So what's the
yeah,
evidence to believe that the business is going anywhere other than up? But the challenge is, that I'm sure you'll have faced and seen, is that if business was a straight line, then everyone would do it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But it's like that, and we've got to accept that and understand that. We may never like it, but once we're comfortable with the fact that there'll be downs as well as ups, it makes things a lot more straightforward.
Mm. Yeah, and I think the belief versus evidence is an interesting thing because we recently finished a project with a financial services brand, and we were looking at improving the conversion rate across the application process. And what you've got to realize sometimes when you create experiences is we all have caveman brains in the 21st
Yeah,
century, and there's a lot of like kind of processes that go on our head that have no rational explanation that really are there to kind of get us to a decision as quickly as possible. So you call these cognitive biases, and you can kind of tap into this in terms of a behavioral economic sense and create experiences to leverage those as much as possible.
oh,
So we're
yeah,
able to apply that to the application process. And we saw like an over 50% increase in successful conversions across channels. So you can really, really start thinking about it far too much sometimes, and your customers aren't doing the same. So really understanding the beliefs that are underlying the decision-making process can go a long way.
yeah. No, that way, absolutely, as you say, because we do operate primarily through beliefs, through our own prism of the world, and
Mm,
therefore it's understanding that it's not just whether it's whether it's not left, it's not right or wrong or left or right. It's what customers would like or not like, I guess.
yeah.
And alongside, obviously, the quote from Sir Alex, is there any other favourite quotes you catch yourself using or you like in general in terms of business or success?
Yeah, probably stepping outside the business world a little bit. I read a book called Chop Wood, Carry Water, and that's been really fundamental to kind of the way I kind of go forward. And there's a quote in that that I think is really important, and it says, "My value comes from who I am, not what I do." And so sometimes you've got to separate you as a person from your achievements, because sometimes if your achievements don't work out, or for whatever reason, say in a business sense, your business fails, I'm not just the founder of AAWE. I am something over and above that, but also all that kind of skill set and discipline and actions that I took into succeeding in AAWE, even though hopefully it doesn't, but if it does fail later down the line, I've still got those to fall back on, and I can apply that to anything I want. And I think that's a really important message that I took from the book, and I try and work forwards with.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, I like that. And it is so true. It's like because if every experience is a learning experience, we must finish the process way more effective than we started, and therefore our value is significant, as you said, independent of any individual outcome.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
and there certainly is, the evidence throughout the business world is clear that many successful businesses or business people have had significant failures on their journey. It's what it is. But that and in fact, our founder Brad once told me, and I repeat it very often, is he told me a long time ago. He said he believed he was successful as he was, and he's a very successful guy because he's made more mistakes than anybody else, not
Mm,
despite, if that makes sense. Not despite making mistakes, it's because the willingness to try, keep trying, and accept the fact that there will be downs as well as ups.
yeah.
I think so a valuable mindset, and you seem to see that. We see that in many people, that it's that again going back to making the decision and acting on it, not just waiting and waiting and waiting and then making a decision when it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, American sports love a stat. And if you look at the greatest basketball players of all time, if it's Michael Jordan or Steph Curry,
Yeah,
they're great, and their percentage in terms of their shooting percentage is in the 40%. That means they miss more than they
yeah,
score, yet they're the greatest of all time. And I think sometimes you've got to step back and realize even the people at the absolute peak of their game will miss more than they score. And I think it's no different than when you're running your business.
absolutely. And there's a clip of I think it's a clip of getting right Roger Federer talking about his career in a very similar way, and it was very much about his message was very much a reset. So
Yeah,
whether it worked, whether I won that point or lost that point, I reset for the next point because what's
yeah.
gone before doesn't affect doesn't affect the next point unless I allow it to. Uh,
Yeah. I think it was, I don't know if you call it a keynote speak. It was at a university graduation, wasn't it? And he
That's
said,
the one.
I won 80% of my career games, but if you break it down to the points, I won 54% or something like that. So more than nearly half of the points I lost, that I played in my life, I lost. And yeah, I just reset after every point and kind of went forward.
That's the one. Yeah, it's fascinating when you do that. And I know, taking it a bit further forward, the Brazilian football team this have a 57% win ratio,
Mm.
and yet they've won the World Cup probably as many. There's been maybe slightly not as many as one or two now, but
Yeah, it's been a few years since they last won it, but they've definitely won it more than anyone else.
they still have that still have that ratio, give or take, because they played so many games now, and it's that that's not that far from 50, but from 50%.
Mm.
The expectation would be it would be for most people, I would suggest, certainly for me, that it would be a lot higher. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't have to be. So Tom, talking about learnings, what have you say you learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
That's a really good question. Maybe I should have prepared for that. I think going back to what we talked about, that actually the power of just putting one foot in front of the other
Yeah,
will often triumph. And like it's setting up AAWE, I think it's been really, really interesting for me to like really take ownership of the end-to-end customer experience for myself and having the
great,
responsibility for it. And that's been really interesting to start practicing what I preach. And I think just continually, like I say, putting one foot in front of the other, learning from every experience, improving it every day. I think that's something that I felt like hopefully has been a key to my success and hopefully will only lead to more successes going forward.
brilliant, brilliant. And looking forward, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
As a business or kind of what kind of challenges do we feel like we might be able to help clients with?
Please answer both or either.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of helping clients, I think really we're here to help people grow. So I think
Yeah.
any kind of businesses who are looking to achieve growth and maybe have tried a lot of the different kind of traditional ways to grow,
Yes.
I've put together a lot of budget into marketing, etc., and not really seeing the fruits of those labors. That's what we're really here to support because I think we often call ourselves a bit of an insurance policy in terms of a lot of the kind of marketing activity that you've got out there, but also what you can do to start thinking about your business very differently to your competition. And what I think a lot of businesses will see going forward is that their experience is very similar to a lot of others. I mean, if you go to most kind of say fast fashion websites, if you took the logo off each one, you wouldn't be able to tell whose is whose
Yeah.
because they're all designing a very homogeneous experience because they're following the best practices
Yeah.
that everybody else has access to. So I think the brands that are starting to think about how they leverage their own brand within the experience and what I say call create signature moments is going to be a real interesting challenge for us to work with our clients to support them on delivering. And then business, from my perspective, I think the challenges that I'd really like to start looking into is leveraging more tools to kind of automate as much of our processes as possible to productize what we do and streamline our efforts. I mean, I feel like every conversation I have at the moment is about AI. We're already starting to utilize that in understanding customer feedback more quickly, but also with more rigor and more depth and like just thinking about some of the ways in which we can apply that across our processes that we work with businesses with will be really interesting.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And what would you say to anyone that's thinking of going to business right now?
I think do it at the end of the day. I mean, I often will say to someone who's thinking about it, you never feel ready when you're going to business. I mean, I probably would say that I wasn't ready, and if I looked back at when I started to where I am now, I'd probably be quite embarrassed around some of the things that I was doing from day one. But like we said, we learn and we grow, and that's where you get there. I think the other things I'd probably say is that relationships are really, really important to business. If you're
Yeah.
thinking about starting your business Really start thinking about your network, start thinking about who you could reach out to learn from,
Right.
who could be your first investor, who could be your founding client, who could be that sounding board for you to work with and grow with. And then also, I'd say if it does fail at the end of the day, you've got a great note on your CV and you can really learn a lot from being a business owner and start going openly into roles if you want to go back into permanent employment with a lot of confidence in that, you know what, I've put it all on the line. I've made a success of it for that short period of time, if it is a short period of time, and I can take a lot from that, and I will be an asset for anybody going forward.
Brilliant. I love that positioning of it because I suspect a lot of people would say, yeah, but if I wouldn't want to be seen as someone that didn't make it in business. But you're absolutely right. It's a badge of honor, isn't it? Anyone that, making that choice to do it, having that self-belief, all those things are significant beneficial character traits. And some, as you say, sometimes it's just not the right business, is it? It's like that happens all the time. Wonderful. I love that. And if you started again, your business again, do you think is there anything significant that you might do differently yourself?
I don't think significantly. I think probably again back to what we talked about, probably reach out to people earlier on who I could start leveraging to outsource certain activities to, that kind of thing. I
Yep.
think that would probably be my number one learning. And yeah, just again, the relationship point, use the network that I have probably more aggressively from day one. Because you'd be surprised how many people out there who you think are well on top of everything that you're doing, have no idea that you started a business. And 6 months down the line, they're like, "Oh wow, Tom, you've done this thing. That's amazing." I was like, "Yeah, I thought you knew 6 months ago. It would have been great to work with you 6 months ago rather than now." But yeah, I think that's another learning for me.
Brilliant. And finally, what is the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
Wow, that is a really good question. I would say that it would be just follow the path that you see in front of you, because you can't plan where it's going to lead, but as long as you kind of keep sticking to your guns, following that process and being who you are, then it will all work out.
Lovely. Brilliant. Love it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Tom, thank you so much for your time today. That's been really fascinating. There's some real insights there. And for anyone that's watching that would like to get in touch with you or AAWE, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, you know who I am now, Tom Bell, AAWE. You can reach us online at aawe.uk, but I'd just say get in touch with me directly on LinkedIn. You can search me. I should be fairly easy to find. Always happy to grab a coffee, always happy to get on the end of a phone and meet new people. And like we said, explore conversations and see where it might lead. And hopefully I can offer a bit of advice on how people can use customer experience going forward.
Brilliant. Well, for now, thank you so much. You can say it'd be great to catch up with you in another 6, 12 months and just see what the next stage of development are. But for now, thanks so much.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.